Welcome back to A Shark's Perspective. There's a lot of attention out there right now about public speaking, and not everyone is naturally gifted. But like many things, you can really focus on the skills needed to become a better public speaker, whether it's in a conference hall of many or a conference room of a few. Remember that people who can communicate stories well, whether it's to a crowd of hundreds or their own bosses, employees, or colleagues, they can achieve a lot more if they can deliver a better narrative and speak in public well. Amanda Hennessey is the author of Your Guide to Public Speaking, the founder of both Boston Public Speaking and San Diego Public Speaking, an actress with nearly 20 films and TV shows to her credit, and she's also a public speaking and acting coach. And on this episode, we'll discuss how to be a better public speaker, how speaking on social media is similar to and yet different from public speaking, better PowerPoint slides, tips on what to do with those praying hands and restless feet, breathing, reading the audience, dealing with fear, Jan from the Brady Bunch imagining her audience in their underwear, and a lot more. So let's tune in to a public speaking author and coach with a shark who found his voice on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Amanda, thank you so much for joining me today on A Shark's Perspective. If you would, tell us a little bit about your career in a nutshell.
Sure. Thanks for having
Of
me.
course.
I am a public speaking coach. I facilitate workshops and love doing this very much. I started off as an actress and just loved performing in front of people, either making them laugh, think about things in a new way, fun to do a drama, move them to tears. So I find performance fascinating, like what makes for a performance where we cannot take our eyes off someone, what language really moves us, when is saying too much really undermines a message, whether it's for a character or whether it is for a presenter. So I also became an acting coach and acting teacher, and I run a business still doing that. And this transitioned about 10 years ago into helping people with public speaking using all those skills of performing and capturing an audience's attention and bringing it into a whole other level. I was approached by someone in my community saying, I have a presentation at the bank and I'm terrified, and can you help me? And I said, yes, I'm happy to try. And I found it really satisfying and engaging to transfer all these skills into a whole other industry, a whole other world. So I started offering that, and I've really loved it, helping people with no performance background how to handle stage fright, how to make things compelling, even bringing a lot of humor into their presentations, how to tell stories.
Sure.
And I think, and what I know is so many people are not trained on how to speak publicly, how to share their message, and they may be really good at science or athletics or dog training, whatever it is, and then they're expected to know how to teach about it in front of an audience. And and then I think people judge themselves for not naturally knowing how to do it. So I love filling in that gap of people's education.
So I picked up a copy of your book, Your Guide to Public Speaking, Build Your Confidence, Find Your Voice, and Inspire Your Audience. I thought it's a great book. It's a very easy read, especially for people like me who literally have medically diagnosed attention deficit disorders, but it's just really easy to read. It flows through a lot of great points. I'd love to know what sort of inspired you to write the book and take those conversations you were having with people getting prepared for speeches or presentations. What inspired you after that to go write a book?
Sure. I had been coaching for a good many years and found myself saying the same thing again and again, which makes sense because I figured out some things that work and I want to share them with all of my clients and all people who attend workshops. And when I go into organizations and lead workshops, of course I want to share similar things, but I wanted to reach a wider audience. I wanted more people to be able to have more fun on stage, and I knew that I had some things that worked. And I do love writing. I do love explaining things to people. So I had been picturing this book in my mind. I love that you found the book easy to read, because that was one of my top priorities for the book, was how can it be really easy to access, open it up, find a page, read something helpful, grab it and go. So I'm thrilled that it's reached that goal. And so I had been picturing it for a while. And then last summer, the end of the summer, the beginning of the summer, I finally said to myself, okay, now's the time. I have the emotional bandwidth. I have some time. I'm going to write this book. And I set up a writing schedule for myself. And so I woke up Monday, adhered to my writing schedule, felt really great, gathered the ideas I had been collecting over time, did this again Tuesday and went to a yoga class. And when I left the yoga class, I had an email from Simon and Schuster asking me if I would like to write a book about public speaking.
That's great. So correct me if I'm wrong, but this was never intended, because the book doesn't cover it, but it was never intended to necessarily help people get speaking gigs. It wasn't that type of book. I mean, for whom did you write this book? Who was the audience? What was the intention there?
Certainly, yes, this is not a guide to getting speaking gigs. Will it help if you get them? Will it help you do a great job? Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, I'll
If
tell you that. I mean, first of all, this is like focused on the core of actually public speaking rather than how to make a gazillion dollars going up on stage and, everybody giving you massive applause.
Right. The book is really focused on making an impact. And I would say my audience is basically people who are scared or people who want to get to the next level.
Yeah.
Because I love working with people who innovate. Those are some of my favorite people to work with because I love the idea they're doing something differently, they're thinking differently, they're trying something differently, they're taking risks. So I love that. But I want everyone to feel more comfortable being seen and being heard and having a voice. I think that's critically important. I think we all have a unique perspective and can impact the world in a positive way. We need everybody to do this. And so anything I can do to ease people's pain and torment around this topic, happy to help. So that's why I wrote the book, and that's who I wrote the book for.
So, how then do you see public speaking today? Define what it is and how people are basically approaching you for that help. I know there's obviously a lot of different things. We were talking about this earlier about, whether it doesn't necessarily have to just be speaking at a conference. It could be preparing for a presentation and in front of a group of people at work. It could be standing up on stage. It could be media training. It could be a lot of different things.
Certainly, wedding toasts,
Yeah,
that's public speaking, giving a toast at a small family gathering. So, like the larger scale, the smaller scale, speaking up in a meeting, and not even just a meeting with clients, speaking up in an internal meeting is something I will definitely help people with. And communicating in those smaller groups, having conference calls when people can't see you. What do we do with our body language? What do we do with our intention? Webinars. I know you and I talked about that before this podcast, but webinars, yes, perhaps people aren't seeing us, but we're still speaking out
exactly.
to a larger group. And even if they're listening to it 3 weeks later and it's not a live experience, what we did during that recording really matters. Our intentions behind it, if we're smiling or not, how we're sitting in our chair, even though it can't be seen, it can be felt. Even 3 weeks later, a year later, when you listen to it.
Agreed. Agreed. So demographically, how do you see people as speakers? I mean, does that even fall in line with anything? Are older people more confident, or is it younger now with a generation of selfie takers on social? Is it women who lack confidence, or men, or how do you sort of break down who generally is a better speaker coming into it versus who needs more help?
That is a really interesting question because I do have so many people coming to see me from all levels,
Yeah.
and I definitely have male executives and female executives, and I definitely have younger folks, students. I mean, it's everyone needs help in some ways. Are some people more comfortable and need less help in some aspects from me? Yes. But I will say that education level doesn't necessarily determine that you're going to be like a better speaker. I'm in Boston. I'm around people who are highly, highly educated, and that can sometimes really get you in your head. And it's hard to sometimes get back into the passion or make your material as accessible. So some people who maybe don't have a million degrees are like able to really speak from the heart in a really passionate, compelling way. So I would say that's not always a differentiator. And if people are older and they've had more responsibility as a leader, I think there's things they've had to do that perhaps gets them to be more comfortable in front of an audience because they've had to figure it out. But I definitely have people who are like moving up that career ladder, and they're like, I know I can't get to the next step unless I figure this out and get better. Like what I've done so far has got me to this level, but if I want to get further, I've got to do more. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah, it
that's
does.
what I'd
It does.
say. Yeah.
I think probably unfairly that a lot of people would sort of box women in particular into being the generally too afraid crowd, and I don't necessarily think that's true because I've seen some women speakers. I've seen a lot of women speakers blow the doors off of a lot of bad guy speakers. But I know that's often you see a lot of the confidence angle, if you will, is being marketed more by speaking coaches to women. It's more of an empowerment type issue than it would necessarily be for men.
I mean, I will definitely agree that I think as a world, um, women have not gotten uh, a great deal of encouragement in so many ways, which is unhelpful. And I do love helping women, and I think there are certain ways that women are conditioned that do not serve them in terms of really owning the stage. And I do love helping people in that way. But I definitely see men struggling with some of the same things.
Absolutely.
And often it's a core level of really making this about them in terms of really wanting it to be the audience to really approve, the boss to approve. And that's something that is a normal human thing to want that approval. But I don't know that it's going to make you the best speaker. Actually, I know it's not going to make you the best speaker. We really want it to be about sharing information and impacting the audience. And again, great to like have people like you and laugh at your jokes and respect you, but not having those be your top priority. Having like, I have a message, I'm excited to share it with you, I want you to get it. That's really riveting. And then the audience doesn't feel that neediness.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, I mentioned a younger audience, but speaking of social media, do you think that sort of a selfie video on Instagram, for example, helps someone more, or does it hurt them more with public speaking? Because we've got so many people who are a generation, if you will, really two generations now, especially the Gen Zs who are growing up knowing how it's almost part of their DNA to speak, put themselves out there, but on a camera, on a phone, which is a lot different than standing in front of a crowd of conference attendees or higher up decision makers. So that's not the same kind of confidence. But I'm curious if you think that where people are doing that more and sort of putting their speeches, if you will, on camera with a phone, is that helping them become better speakers?
Well, if we think about public speaking in the broadest sense of the word, video is definitely a part of that. So I'd say they are going to get better at that more quickly, and that's going to serve them because that generation, and I think for all of us, videos become much more compelling. So I'd say if we're thinking about public speaking containing many different arenas, then that's an arena they're going to get better at by being more comfortable being on video. And I do have a client who is more comfortable on video. She's younger, and I've really helped her to grow in terms of being able to handle the stimulation in the room of a live audience. So when we come over to that vein of public speaking with live humans all around looking at us,
Yeah.
yes, I think that becomes harder if you are locked into your phone all the time. So I will say with folks who are older, who didn't grow up locked into their phones, I think both things terrify them at times, being in front of the live audience and being in front of a video.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it is very interesting what people are more comfortable with, but handling the stimulation in the room is something that, yeah, a lot of people need need help with.
Well, one of the things you talked about in the book as well is, and it's something that bothers me often with speeches, is authenticity. I speak at a lot of marketing conferences and see a lot of people kind of regurgitating some of the just very vanilla milk toast presentations. I don't know who the person was. It looked like they Googled it 10 minutes before. Granted, they probably had great intentions, and maybe mine didn't come off the same way to them. You just never know. But one of the things to me that always stands out with great speakers is when they are there, and I hate the overuse of this word, but when they are their authentic self.
Yes, there's nothing like it because then they're original.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It feels like, when you're thinking about, we'll call it the vanilla speech. Although I really like the flavor vanilla, but we know
Yeah.
what we're saying. We
Right.
really, we're not, when it's bland and it feels cliched or pat and it feels like there wasn't a lot of effort. It's probably somebody has an idea of what a speech should sound like
Exactly.
and is perhaps doing it because they have to and is like, I don't really want to do this or even know how. So I'm going to do what I've seen other people do. I'm going to get information and put it on these all over these slides. I'm going to read the slides and then, oh God, thank God, I'm over with it. I'm done with this. Where I think that authentic self is much more likely to be tapped into when we can go really deep with why we're doing something. And we go deeper than because I have to, because my boss is making me. When we can go into like, wow, this is an amazing opportunity for me to help people think differently.
Mm-hmm.
And a question that's often asked by screenwriters and people who write plays and TV shows is, let's think about these people and then like what makes this day different?
Yeah.
What like we see a whole town and then a tornado comes or spiders attack or whatever it is. And so I think when we're approaching a public speaking gig in whatever format it is, it's a video, it's in a big conference, it's your team meeting, like what's new? What's different? Why is this day different? What is the new thing you have to share? Or perhaps it's information people have known for a while, but you're going to share it in a cool new way that makes it easier to understand
Exactly.
and compelling. So I think we really want to get your heart in it. Like, and the more we go, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Not going to existential angst of like, why am I
Yeah.
doing this? But more like, why should people care? Why does this matter? And I think that's when we start to get to the core. And I think that's where confidence starts to come from because we're standing on solid ground. Like, I know when I get fired up about stuff, I care a lot less about what people are thinking in terms of like, this is like, I'm so excited for people to be a lot less freaked out about public speaking. I get fired up about that. And if they like my outfit or don't, I really don't care. I am much more about helping them have less pain and torment and having a much better time. So I
Yeah.
think we can get into that fire in our belly. That's where like, and we let ourselves go, like our natural rhythms work, our hand motions work. The experience becomes about what it purely can be, like a moment of transformation for everybody.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I get so frustrated when I see people get up there. You could just tell the difference between the ones that really genuinely care about their message and then which ones are just up there to give a speech about whatever the message is. So no, I agree with it. So you talk a little bit as well in the book that I loved about slides. The fact that you brought up the actual PowerPoint slides that people have to focus on. Give us some of your guidance on how people should look at their PowerPoint slides for whatever kind of speech or presentation they're doing, and whether or not that's should be filled with aspirational content or meaty data filled type content.
Sure. I think most people have been experienced the death by PowerPoint
Yeah.
situation where you feel a little insulted, like, hey, speaker, I can read. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Why isn't this
Exactly.
just an email? Why are we here doing this? And a lot of people put so much time into their slides and they think, cool, my slides are full of information. Now I can just read them to the group and I don't even have to look at everybody. So I think often it's everything is backwards where really you're the main event, the slides are the witty sidekick.
Exactly.
And And it doesn't mean they have to be full of humor, though I think humor is just an amazing thing to add and
Hmm.
highly recommend it when you can, when it's appropriate. It keeps people awake, it surprises them, it can be great. So I think the slides should do what you cannot. You can say full sentences out loud to the group. Let's not put tons of full sentences on the slides. If there is a picture that tells an amazing story about the work you're doing or symbolizes that, get that on the slide because that's going to be able to do something you can't do. There's an amazing short video that illustrates something that then put that up there. You can't suddenly be a compelling video. So really think like, wow, can I do this or can the slides do this? Like really you have different responsibilities and it really should augment what you're doing, not be the whole main act where you just look at it and bore everyone to death.
Yeah.
So, and I think not having too many words, like less is more, less is more, less is more. Be creative.
Well, and everybody needs to go through at least once, good, good or bad. They need to at least once go through having your slides not work when you're up on a stage, or your clicker not work, or something go wrong with your PowerPoint, because then you really learn, do you know the story well that you're trying to tell? Not is the whole story driven by your bad stock image photography that so many people rely on. So
Oh, people shaking hands over a
exactly,
desk.
exactly.
Yes, that makes, yeah, like let's just not
Oh
be a
God.
cliche. I know it feels safe, but safe is really boring and it doesn't make an impact. This is the tricky thing. Because so many people don't want to public speak, they're like, I just want to get this over with. And they're also like, I don't really want to be seen. So then we tried it, but the thing is, you are being seen. So the people who are like, I don't want to be seen because I don't know how to handle this situation
Yeah.
because they don't have training, which I get, is that like, let me do the safe thing. Let me put like what people are expecting a speech to be, which is then what everyone else has already seen. It's so boring. But if we can, like, again, get excited about the mission and be like, wow, how can I tell this story in a more interesting, less cliched way? Like, what would be a fun experience I can provide
Exactly.
for my audience? Like, I think about like, if you're throwing a party and you're like, well, I don't want to do what everyone's doing. I'm going to play this kind of music and I'm going to make these new kind of crepes and we're going to, do whatever. Then we're kind of like, and I want to show them my new pillows. Then we're like, cool. I want to show them new things and show them we did this cool thing with our plants. So if you're up there giving a talk, like how can that be similar? Ooh, I want to show them this cool image that sums up what I'm sharing. Ooh, I want to tell the story in a different order they're not expecting. That is what's going to keep people with you
Yeah.
and have them remember what the heck you were talking about because it's like it was new, it was different.
So a couple of things with audience, then in particular, we'll start off talking about how you evaluate your audience, and I've we talked before about this. Is something I've seen quite often where a conference organizer will tell you that they have an advanced level of skill for the audience attendees. Then when you get there, quite often they're not nearly as advanced as they wanted to describe, and I've seen that on many occasions now, and it a lot of times it changes by the culture of the content, content of the conference. Some conferences are skew much higher level, some skew much younger. It could be the same way with the content of a play, a lot of its context, if you will. But that also relates to energy, the energy in the audience, and how someone can play. And I think I mentioned this to you when we were doing prep on this, but I've delivered a speech to one group that it just killed, delivered the exact same speech to a different group of lower energy. And you could just see I felt like I could hear crickets in my head watching the reactions with some of the people that were giving me, rave reviews and great applause the week before. How do you sort of attack the energy and the not the quality of the audience, but how do you sort of look at the audience as part of the conversation and how you're delivering a public speech?
I love that you use the word conversation. Excellent. And when we're having a conversation, let's say, one day we have a conversation with our best friend And one day they're super happy and our conversation flows, boom, boom, boom. The next day they're
Yeah,
really sad. It's a different conversation. So, what I love about you using that word is it a sense of like, and yes, yeah, you're talking a lot more during the conversation if you're up on stage, etc. But there is that energetic exchange, and we don't know what we're coming into. And
exactly.
I realize that for a lot of people, the unknown is really scary. And I very much get that. But if we can go in with, like, I don't know, we'll see. If we bring curiosity and flexibility, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, just about how to handle when, like, this audience does not know the things I thought they knew. I'll talk about how to handle that. So I think coming in with openness, like, yep, you have practiced and rehearsed and it rocked this crowd. We're going to never take that for granted. Not in an insecure way, like, oh my gosh, it's going to fall apart, but more like, I'm just going to see. I'm going to see what happens. So, in terms of your question about what to do when the audience is not who you thought they were, let me back up for one sec. Do you think sometimes conference folks are saying that because they want the gig to seem more enticing? Or do you think they just get it wrong? They just don't know, or maybe a mixture?
A little mixture of both.
Okay. And we can't control them. So they are who they are. They're doing what they're doing, and they're no doubt like have good intentions behind it. So I think
Yeah, I'd never question the intentions. I think what happens a lot is the evaluator themselves may simply think that their level is also high, if that makes sense. And
yes, yes, yes. They're kind of
they're
misreading some
they're
things, perhaps.
misreading it. They're sort of looking at these people and thinking they're at the a similar level as well, and you can do it on any kinds of levels. Though I mean, somebody that's the head of engineering won't know nearly as much as the engineer. The head of engineer, I mean, ridiculous example, but the head of engineering is going to be, at a company is going to know how to run this more as a business, but maybe he's spent more time over the last 5 years perfecting the business side of it than actually, working the mechanics of it. That's what I mean by
No,
that.
I actually think that all makes sense because you can have an assumption with the title
Yeah, exactly.
that it means a certain level of things, but they're actually doing different skill sets.
Exactly.
So I actually think that example is really uh, apt for this. So this to set yourself up to succeed with the fact that you are moving into an unknown world, I think is to really step back and know, okay, so my assumption about my audience is X, so I'm going to prepare that talk. But let me actually step back for a sec and think about what would I keep in here if I found out that their level of knowledge, their foundational understanding of this topic is less? Like, what would I keep? And I think then, what stories would I tell? And and if I were going to go a little higher in terms of the higher level knowledge, what would I need to build up into that to give them something new? What would I need to bridge in what they do understand now to bring them into some new understanding? And I think taking the temperature of the audience in the beginning is something you could then do. Now, if you could either really start off by saying, "Hey, with a show of hands, I'd love to know how many people have been in engineering for 1 to 3 years. How many people have been in engineering between 5 and 15 years?" And you can start to get a sense, like if tons of people are raising their hands with the first question, you know more where you are. And it may just help you be like, okay, I'm going to go with plan B, where I'm going to pull back on this. So
Mm-hmm.
that may be a way to do it. You could think of, is there a question you can ask that can just start to gauge where people are, really get a reality check? Does that sound like something that could work?
Yeah, it does. And talking about gauging it before, one of the things that I've seen, a little bit different when you MC an event, because when you MC, you're there from, I've done that many times where I'm the first person to talk and the last person to talk. So you don't get as easy a read on the audience, but I always encourage speakers who go to, especially when they go to conferences and there are other speakers attending. I'm not a big fan of going on first or second if I don't have to, because I like to get a little bit of a read of the audience. Go out and meet people, sit amongst the audience and sort of evaluate how some of the other speakers are, and sort of read that temperature. That's always helped me personally, just sort of get a gauge on what the audience is like. And you can't, poll a room of 1,000 that easily. But if you're speaking at a decent sized audience, you still meet quite a few people before, and network, and I think that helps a lot as well. So
Oh, yeah, I think networking really helps it just know like, okay, this is a big mass of people, but it's made up of individuals. And
absolutely,
I had a conversation with them. I
great
now feel
point.
connected to them. I'm not like, oh, I'm over here and they're over there and they're a big mass of humanity judging me.
Yeah,
It's like, okay. So that may be better. And also I think sometimes I know I've gone into workshops where, oh, you're going to have both people who are at this level and this level. It's like,
hmm
all right. And I think there's something around managing expectations, such
yes,
as, hey, today I'm really excited. I'm going to cover X, Y, and Z. And for those of you who have been in this industry for a while, I'm going to veer over here and go to this level. I'm going to talk about these things. For those of you where this is new, I'm going to have a Q&A after so you can ask some deeper questions, or like I'm going to explain some of those things. There may be a way to give a little bit of a roadmap. Like, and if there are terms I bring up that are new to you, write them down. I
yeah.
am happy to explain them later, or you can email me later. But I want to bring us on a journey of the whole thing. I mean, I'm speaking vaguely, but do you understand what I'm saying?
100%. No, and I love the networking part about point about for the Q&A in particular, because that also helps me when I'm giving speeches. I'm not looking out into a crowd of however many hundred it is, or whether it's one person or 1,000. The fact that I know three or four names can also help me if you don't get a lot of hands raised with questions. It can at least get one. There's Johnny or Susie that I met before. Let me ask them a question as well. You can at least have somebody in the audience that's a friendly, and you've at least gotten that idea before. And I love that point about speaking with someone before about what their expectations are for the event. I'm always able to do that as an MC, but if you're coming on and you're the fourth speaker in the day, it's kind of hard to level set what someone's expectation is unless you've talked to them before the event and gotten some good feelings. But I always encourage people to go do that, just to get a feeling for the temperature in the room. And it's not an
Yes,
exact
and
science. It's little
but we
tidbits
can,
that help.
yeah, and also, and in terms of that energy level, there's a number of different things I like to think about this, because yes, say it's a week-long conference and it's Friday morning, and there was a lot of parties
Yeah,
on Thursday night, and people are looking a little out of it at your 9 a.m. talk.
exactly.
Not your fault. Like, and it's Ian, I think often it's great to acknowledge what's true. Hey everyone, welcome to Friday morning. I know that it was a late night. Here we are. I'm going to speak a little softer. No, like there's
Yeah,
ways to play, just acknowledge what's true. There's a lot of snow that happens in New England where I am.
yeah,
And if like suddenly it's like there's so much snow and people are distracted because they're like, oh my gosh, I have to get my kids out of school. What's happening? Yes, there's tons of snow out there. We're going to take a break in 10 minutes so people can check about school closings. Like when you start to know there are like the energy is distracted by something different that's happening, I think it's great to acknowledge it so people are not distracted. Like, does she not hear the fire alarm that's going off? Why is there a fire alarm going off? Should we leave the building? Like be the leader in the room. And like,
yeah.
yes, you practice your talk and you want to like do it, but like roll with what's happening. And also, in terms of energy, um, another thought, I was at a conference in San Diego in April, women's conference, and I was a vendor as well. So I got up really early, set up my booth, was chit-chatting with people throughout the day and listening to inspiring speakers, excuse me. And by 3:30, I was very inspired. I was like overly inspired. I was ready to go home.
Yeah.
And there was one more speaker, and I was like, okay, More inspiration. And I'm all about inspiration, but I just wanted, a nap. And this woman came out. She was a sportscaster and an attorney. She was amazing. She came out with so much energy because I think she could sense the energy in the room was dying. It was post lunch. We were like, oh, she came in, and I don't want to be as loud as she is because I'm on a microphone, but she came out like, all right, everybody, I am the last speaker. Are
Right,
you ready?
right.
Like, she was so the athletic coach. And I was like, oh, thank God it's you. Like, she got my attention. So she didn't let the energy in the room dictate what her energy could be. Because she could have been like, oh, they all want to go home. All right, well, I'll go out there and I'll try my best. She
Exactly.
was like, no, I'm going to like turn this around. And she did. So, and that was a lot of people. And just with her energy of coming out there, like, nope, this energy in the room is not determining my energy. She like changed the weather by walking in big and open and sparkly and direct
Sure.
and just took charge. And like, so I loved seeing that. And I think too that this is something we want to know. Like, if we're looking out and like, yeah, we're the first speaker. We'd love to be the third. We'd love to chit chat during, but that's not the deal. We're the first one. And I think we do want to bring in that high energy. And then, but if we find that, like, wow, high energy, it feels like it's just hitting against a wall, maybe we go into a more intimate place. Maybe this is like a quieter group. Maybe this is, but we want to share the same message just from a different tone and play with that and like just see where it goes. The group needs something from you. And I it's interesting because I often do a lot of the same things in my workshops. Oh, adjust and tweak. But I can definitely come in and like we have a loud, good, fun time, but then I'll get a lot more soft spoken, more introverted folks. And I know I need to bring it just into a more intimate place.
Hmm.
So trying all those gears on your own is a great way to practice and not take it personally because audiences have a different chemistry of their own.
Well, let's talk then about some of your favorite tips in public speaking, and I'll bring up nerves and fear to start. So, I remember this sadly, and I saw it not that long ago on YouTube, but about 100 years ago, Mike Brady from the Brady Bunch was giving his daughter Jan some advice on
Oh,
speaking at a debate, and he said he gave her a story that anybody who's done a speech has probably heard this before, but he said when you get up in front of those VIPs, you should picture them sitting in their underwear. And he said it worked like a charm because it made him realize that his audience was only human. And he went on to say that you couldn't be afraid of someone in their underwear, although I have seen some scary looking underwear. But kind of give us some tips on how to deal with nerves and fear to start.
yeah, suddenly the seeing people in their underwear doesn't really feel very
I know.
appropriate or PC. It's funny because it was such a common thing, and now I'm like, that sounds like a visit to HR is going to
Exactly.
happen sometime soon.
Exactly.
So yes, I'm not giving that advice. I think that, but knowing your audience is human is great and important, which means they are coming in the room with their lives, their ups, their downs. That phone is reminding them that their life is not perfect every second of every day.
Yeah.
So if they come in looking weird, we can certainly project on that and be like, they don't like me, they don't like my outfit. Oh my God, why am I doing this? And then this whole nonsense chatter starts. Or we can just recognize, like, for example, people come, they take acting classes with me, they take public speaking, they are freaking out. They are scared. They hit that pay button and now they got to show up. And they come and they're like, "Oh my gosh." So I know the energy in the room is weird, but I know I want to bring a sense of ease into the room and joy and delight. And so in terms of nervousness, when you can start to feel those sensations in your body, and for some people they turn bright red, for some people their hands are shaking, their stomach is full of butterflies, which actually, if you think about it, is really pretty. But for us, it feels like they are
Right.
boxers punching us, but they have
Yeah.
really full feet. So it actually gets funny if you think about it. And or they get really sweaty. And then what happens is there's a whole story around that sensation. uh, my heart is beating fast. Oh my God, my heart is beating fast. My heart is beating fast. Oh my gosh, this is so bad. My heart is beating fast. So now I'm completely in crisis because I've decided it's a terrible thing. My heart is beating fast. If you're having a heart attack, yes, go get medical attention. If that's not the case, then if you feel your heart beating fast, just notice it. Oh, my heart's beating fast. Okay. Like, it doesn't have to be this nightmare. My hand's shaking. That means they're going to think I'm not an expert. Everyone's going to know I'm nervous and they're going to think that I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, that's an arbitrary story. How about, oh, my hand's shaking a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, why? Oh, I can't wait to tell them this new thing I discovered. Like, so if we can just accept those feelings instead of judging them and becoming nervous about being nervous, because I think people have this idea that they should be really, really calm
Yeah,
when they're speaking. And I think calm is really boring. It's great for the end of the yoga class, like namaste,
exactly.
shavasana, like terrific. Let's be really calm. You do not go see Beyonce in concert to watch her be really relaxed. Or
Right.
like a political rally. We're not going there like, oh, they were so chill. No, no. We want to see people with passion. And when we're passionate, our body feels very alive. And so when you've got your body's giving you a lot of energy and we start to judge it, we're like, no, I have to be calm. No, you don't. Like, let's just let go of that expectation. And yes, freaking out and terrible amounts of stress feel terrible. I'm not suggesting like, yay, that's always the best. But if we cannot tell ourselves a story about what these sensations mean, and again, it's an arbitrary story we have made up, we're better. Like, so if you're somebody who turns bright red, decide you look good in red. Wow, I can feel my face is turning red. Great, I look good in red. Onwards. So, audience, I'm excited for you to know about marketing. I want you to know 5 things that people are not doing well. Whatever it is, let's just take it in stride that our body is having an experience. And if we can not judge those feelings, it's much better.
So you mentioned namaste, which made me think about the preacher hands that you see a lot of people do. I know you give some advice on this. I tend to overly use my hands, and I walk all over the stage. You can't hold somebody like me down unless you glue my shoes to the floor. But
You
what
find a
advice?
way out.
And
Find a
yeah,
way
no,
out.
I'd find a way out. I'd just walk around in my shark socks. But what kind of advice do you give people as to how to, you know, control their body and their movement when they're on stage? What's the advice that is going to make them a better speaker?
Excellent question. Okay, let's talk about movement first in terms of the whole physical form. Later, I do want to circle back to your shark socks, but we'll
Yeah.
we'll put that aside for now. So, I would say stillness is incredibly powerful. Don't worry, I'm going to keep talking. I'm not saying you need to be still the whole time. When you are making your profound point, the
Yes.
statistic that's blowing people's minds, the like new way of thinking, stillness is awesome. It brings attention to you, to your idea, to that message. You're leading up to that. You're telling a story where there's movement. So we were thinking, we were driving really fast, trying to make the light. We were doing this, and we were at a red light, and we realized X, Y, and Z. So maybe in that part of the story where I'm at the red light, that's where I get really still.
Yeah.
Not only is
Yeah.
story reflecting stillness because we're at that red light and we're law abiding citizens, I hope, that are stopping at the red light, but also like we're taking a moment of stillness and it for the audience brings like calms us all down into that moment to really hear what we're saying. If we're and I think if we're moving, like say I'm going to tell you 3 points about why I love chocolate, I might say, hey, there are 3 things that I love about chocolate, so perhaps I'll move on that. That's like helpful information, but it's not the mind-blowing information that's coming. My first point is, and then I'll be still on that first point because I want you to really hear it. And same with the second point. But in the transitions, I think that's the time to move. You say the key thing, enjoy stillness.
Mm-hmm.
It is your friend and it's really, really powerful. And it gives you a chance to breathe and get grounded. And then you can go back into getting your steps in, Shark. You can like,
Yeah.
then walk. But does that sound like something that you could play with?
We'll see.
Okay, that's all I have.
We'll see. I'm doing a
That's all
speech
I have
next
for you.
week, and unless the room is small, I'm going to be. I've got to move. So
And again, moving is great. It's just, I think even if you were to go through your talk and just find like, where are my big moments? Where are the big sentences where
yeah.
like I'm building up to that sentence? Just see what it's like to be still just for that.
Yeah, and
I
for me, it's not as an issue with nerves. I've spoken several hundred times on stage and given a ton of keynotes and emceed a bunch of events. I just, it's just part of it's just having ADD and having to move everywhere. It's just always
Great.
been fidgety and move, and that's more of the authentic me, you know.
Great. And I would never, and I think it's great. Again, I think movement can be great. I just think if you bring in a little stillness, it'll be
Yeah,
even more
no, I
powerful.
love that. I
Yeah. And
love
when
the
it comes to,
dramatic points and pausing, changing the tone of your voice a little bit to really let it sink in as well.
yeah, and I'd say what now when we do things that everyone's expecting, like we have the boring stock photos on the slides and we talk like we're doing a speech and we're in a vocal habit, people
Exactly.
tune out because it just sounds like, oh, they're doing a speech and
Mm.
I don't care. They're phoning it in. Like, eh. So when we can surprise people, like you being somebody who moves a lot and then suddenly being still, whoa, we've suddenly changed and we've surprised them. And like, so I know if I'm like, I've been talking in a certain register for a while, I'll just suddenly get louder and maybe have a weird pause because I
Hmm.
just don't want people to like be lulled into like any kind of monotony. So
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
like to surprise by shifting my physicality and shifting my vocal quality in ways that are unexpected. And so in terms of the hands, have you been told you use your hands too much or do you believe that about yourself?
No, I have, and it was partially because I used to be on TV, and so when I would be on TV, I would look like, some
Kermit the Frog?
stereotypical. Yeah, well, maybe not that much, but pretty close. But that's I would use a lot of motion. It looks like somebody trying to tell the weather and describe as you're standing there describing the fronts that are just west of your location or that are coming in. It looks
Coming
it
into
looks
the
like a
east.
weather forecast almost, and it's just something I naturally. I mean, I'm doing it now, and I just catch myself doing it just because I talk with my hands. But sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not.
I would say if because sometimes people get really paranoid about it, and so I always like to get a reality check
Yeah,
of like,
yeah.
is the and so if someone said, I'd say if you can have somebody watch and then just raise their hands when it feels a little kooky, when it feels like a little too much, and you can be like, oh, okay, what am I doing during this
Yeah,
section? Because it's going to be so weird for you to not use your hands. That doesn't like not using hands looks super weird. People look trapped and like
yeah.
they're like have an invisible
Yeah, don't
fence
stick them
around
in your
them.
pocket.
Right. And you may have some habits that are like just like you're just going a little too far and some people are only using one hand and that's odd. Like what happened to the other one? What's it doing in that pocket? So, I would say probably it's serving you quite a bit. There just may be certain moments where it goes over the top and maybe that's when you're getting super excited or maybe you're losing your breath. There may be some kind of habit that kicks you into overdrive and that's going to take an honest and kind person to just let you know when it looks spazzy and then maybe then you can be like all right here what am I going to do with my hands here what's going to tell the story better and not be distracting because people often are like I don't know what to do with them and they're overthinking them they're not trusting their hands and I think we can often trust them a lot more than we think you get somebody to tell you a story about like their pet and how much they love them watch their hands they won't have practiced it but they're like he's this big and he jumps up in my lap and I give him a kiss and I put him in a sweater. Suddenly the hands are like help. They want to help tell the story. So yes, I think that little like the little in front like a little preacher thing. Yeah, I think it's a little weird. It's good to be videotaped. Videotape yourself. And see what's really happening, but come into the videotape viewing with compassion. A lot of people get really
Yeah,
critical.
yeah, very much. Traditionally, say when you're working with a speaking coach, though, a lot of the time, especially with like Toastmaster events, you're doing all this in person. How does somebody work with a speaking coach who's not in the Boston area?
Sure. It's interesting because actually I sometimes work with my clients who are in Boston over Skype or through Zoom because suddenly they have so much work to do and that commute to see me is like precious time.
Yeah,
So actually my clients who live near me, we jump on Zoom and I definitely when I'm traveling meet with people. And so clearly these means allow us to communicate and I can see people and hear them and there's a lot I can do through this means. Yes, in-person time is precious, but I definitely have had very effective sessions with people
yeah.
online, and it's just, it opens things up, which is great. And also, especially if people are working on their video skills or interviewing online,
Absolutely.
through Skype, like, great, let's do it in the medium in which this is going to happen. So yes.
Perfect.
Also, on bostonpublicspeaking.com, I have some resources that folks may find helpful. I've got some short videos about handling nerves, being the center of attention. What on earth do you do with your
Yeah.
hands? And I've also got some really good articles that I've written about interviewing and a lot of other good stuff. So, bostonpublicspeaking.com. They'll also be up on san diego publicspeaking.com for your pleasure.
So, Amanda, you live in Boston. There are a lot of news stories about the sharks, especially the great whites off your coast. So, I've got to ask you, what's your favorite kind of shark and why?
Oh my goodness. I like the sharks that aren't near me, I guess. Like, I know I spoke to a shark conservator and actually I have like an example about sharks in my book, which you maybe enjoyed. And so I think I wish they were not so close to shore, because I don't think it's good for them and I don't think it's good for us. So I hope that doesn't continue, because I know a lot of beaches have been shut down. But I think hammerhead sharks are really cool looking. That's what I'll say.
Agreed. Well, Amanda, it's a special time in the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
I am so ready.
All right. Number 1, public speaking or acting?
Public speaking.
I'm surprised you said that. So, number 2.
And you're talking about what I would prefer to be doing right now?
In general, yeah.
Yeah, I would say it has shifted into this, because I actually, and I'll explain just a little bit, I'm really enjoying being myself.
Yeah.
Acting, it was so fun to explore other characters. Public speaking, this is you got me.
Yeah.
And I'm enjoying that a lot.
I just didn't know how much of literally a drama queen you were. So that was why. Number 2, an area where you spend a lot of time, San Diego or Boston?
San Diego.
Thank you. I probably would have ended the recording early if you'd said Boston. Boston's a wonderful town, but it's not San Diego.
It's really cold.
It's really, really cold for like 6 months of the year. So, number 3, you've appeared in roughly about 20 films, including the major motion picture hit 2012's The Heat. So the question is, Sandra Bullock or Melissa McCarthy?
I plead the fifth. They are both lovely. I refuse to choose.
Okay. Number 4, we were talking about a lot of speakers, and here are a couple of famous public speakers. I'd love to know which one's your favorite. Tony Robbins or Oprah Winfrey?
I would go with Oprah Winfrey.
Ooh. Okay. Number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Cornbread. Hands down.
With authority. All right.
Yes.
So, Amanda, where can people find out more about you, buy the book, follow you on your social channels, go to your website, learn more about your coaching and more?
Sure. bostonpublicspeaking.com or san diego publicspeaking.com. I am on Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm going to join Instagram, but I'm not quite there yet. And the book is Your Guide to Public Speaking. Build your confidence, find your voice, and inspire your audience. And thank you so much for having me and for the audience for listening.
You bet. Amanda, thank you so much for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So there was my conversation with Amanda Hennessey, the author of Your Guide to Public Speaking, the founder of both Boston Public Speaking and San Diego Public Speaking, an actress with nearly 20 films and TV shows to her credit. And she's also both a public speaking and acting coach. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with her. First, which generation is better at public speaking today? I've been thinking about this a lot lately because we have 2 generations now who are putting themselves out there constantly with selfies and Instagram videos and funny TikTok videos. But staring into a phone is a lot different than speaking to a room full of decision makers in a business or a conference hall of 500 attendees, or even a webinar where it's all audio. I've seen this many times at conferences where I've either keynoted or served as an MC, with speakers from many age groups. You do often see that social media has really helped some speakers more just with being able to put themselves out there. But I've also seen where the noises in the background or the stares back at the speaker or the QA sessions can show a speaker as less than stellar because of those kinds of disruptions, if you will. Things like that aren't always the easiest thing to prepare for in public speaking. Think about when a clicker doesn't work, or the microphone dies, or the PowerPoint doesn't move forward correctly. It happens all the time, and it's happened to me before. I'm friends with one speaker who's younger, who's fantastic on social media videos, but not nearly as fantastic on stage. All sexes and all ages need to become better public speakers. Whatever the form, being a good public speaker isn't gifted to you just because you're younger and on Instagram, and it isn't taken away from you because maybe you're older and you've never done a Facebook Live. Take whatever you have learned in social media to help you become a better one, though, and focus on the audience in front of you. Those are the likes and the engagement that you need the most. In whatever format it is, think of it as a conversation, whether in a conference room or a conference hall. At least that will help you focus on them and make sure that they hear you. Second, let PowerPoints help you tell a story with a visual, but don't let them overtake you with what you're saying and doing. Don't put what they expect to see or make them read. And don't put too much that they jump too far ahead of you in your own story. The focus should be on you as a speaker. As she said, you can tell full sentences. The slides should not. Let them do something that you cannot. You and the slides have different responsibilities. As I mentioned earlier, if the clicker, the slides, or the projector, or any of that doesn't work properly, ask yourself, can you still tell a good story? Third, so in business and marketing especially, we often refer to our audiences. And being a speaker, needing to understand who your audience is no different. But the level of skill that your event organizer may believe is there in that audience may not actually be the general level of attendee. That's not necessarily the organizer's fault. Not every director of digital marketing, for example, is created equal. Some know how to jump into Google Ads or Facebook Ads Manager and create and manage campaigns, while others can barely turn on their computers because they're mostly focused on the business side rather than the mechanics. Think of how many campaigns were managed poorly because the team didn't know their audience well. It applies somewhat similarly to speaking. Just learn as much as you can about your audience and don't assume that everything someone may believe that they're telling you is actually the gospel truth when understanding who your audience is. In another rare fourth, look, I've literally enjoyed swimming with sharks since I was little, so I have zero fear of public speaking. I don't make any claims of being a Tony Robbins type speaker, but fearing the audience doesn't hold me and it shouldn't hold you back at all. Sharks bite, but the audience does not. So some of my own advice on being a good speaker, and I hope none of these sound cliche, I just continue to see people speak who don't do these well. Tell a story in a different way and be authentically you. Share some strong opinions. Give them something that they'll learn. Make it about sharing information. Help people fix problems. Give them an action item, even if it's just one, which they can take back and make a change that's better for what they're doing. Give them content that will keep them from staring at their laptops. They shouldn't be on social media unless they're tweeting about how awesome your presentation is. Bring a lot of energy, more than they brought. Remember that people are there to learn, to be motivated, to be inspired. Project calm and confidence and happiness. Use different tonality. Channel whatever you have into that speech. If you're nervous about the people in the room, network before the event. Grab a cup of coffee or water with them before. Network, connect. Ask them their expectations. Go out and meet a few people, and then when you're up on stage, find them and look at them for some familiarity. It'll help you a lot. Test your microphone before, and then test again. Test your material and find what resonates. Practice, watch yourself on video, and breathe a little bit. It's going to be okay. And if you absolutely have to imagine your audience sitting there wearing their underwear, well, then keep it clean like the Brady Bunch. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you for the privilege of your time. I'm done speaking. Today anyway, so join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.